For a very short question before statements, the Honourable Member for Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Very briefly then, Mr. Speaker, and my friend from Vaudreuil, does it not occur to him that it's time to revisit what Jean Chrétien put forward as the most advanced financing laws in Canada, and to other points made by other members, to encourage Canadians to vote, to give people a reason to vote, even if they're in a so-called safe riding for a party they don't favor, to restore the per vote support?
And we will have to find out after statements by members and after question period what the member thinks about that. Statements by members. The Honourable Member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, it's a well-known fact that when you visit the Yukon, you will come back. In fact, you may never leave. There are raw adventures like the grueling Arctic Ultra and 40 below, or the luxury of viewing northern lights from your fire-warmed cabin. We have it all, and we have it for anyone. Hot springs, dog sledding, kayaking, hiking, paddling down river to Dawson City, where you can take in the show at Diamond Tooth Gertie's after a soak in the spa. Faire découvrir au monde.
Sharing these exceptional landscapes, culture, and exceptional community with the world is a key part of our local economy. In fact, tourism accounted for approximately 4.4% of the territory's GDP in 2022, and the sector continues to grow.
Has made towards Yukon tourism, including funding for Josie's Old Crow Adventures, alpine glamping, wellness on the land, the McBride Museum, and many more. Mr. Speaker, on this final day of National Tourism Week, led by the Tourism Industry Association of Canada, I want to salute and to thank the operators, guides, entrepreneurs, artists, and community leaders who make every visit to the Yukon an unforgettable experience.
C'est beau.
Honourable Member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
I rise to pay homage to World War II veteran Alvy Burden. Alvy was a resident of Armstrong, British Columbia, and was not only Armstrong's oldest veteran, but he was also Canada's oldest black veteran of the Second World War. Born in Tisdale, Saskatchewan in 1922, Alvy Burden joined the Canadian Forces at the age of 19 and was posted to the Saskatoon Light Infantry Regiment. Alvy served more than 21 months at the Italian and Dutch campaigns and was the only black member of his company. In Italy, Alvy Burden was nearly killed in action by shrapnel wounds to his head and wrists. Thankfully, Alvy made his recovery, lived on, and helped younger generations understand the realities of war until he passed on March 26th at the age of 104 years old. Alvy Burden's service reminds us today of the sacrifices that members of the Canadian Armed Forces have made and continue to make on our behalf, lest we forget.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, the YMCA of Greater Toronto is grounded in 6 core values: inclusiveness, integrity, kindness, optimism, respect, and well-being. Once in a lifetime, you may encounter someone who truly lives and breathes these ideals. Medhat Sabeh Mahdi, the former president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Toronto, was one of those rare individuals. Earlier this month, he sadly passed away. He was an inspiring community builder who was named to the Order of Canada in recognition of his more than 50 years serving the YMCA, which he transformed into a place for social infrastructure and health equity. He championed causes like combating anti-black racism, youth homelessness, and expanding child care centers. His impact on Scarborough Agincourt is ongoing through his work on the Bridletown Neighbourhood Centre, a project which, when completed, will serve as a physical embodiment of his vision, compassion, and unwavering commitment. Medhat's life's work will continue to resonate for generations to come. Smile on.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
As we celebrate National Volunteer Week, I want to thank the remarkable people who are the heart of Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes, our volunteers. People like Chief Fire Prevention Officer Brent Norton with 45 years of service, or Captain John Houston for 30 years of service as firefighters with the Prescott Fire Service. North Grenville's Volunteer of the Year, Victor DeRoche, or Wendy Galloway, who received a Lifetime Volunteer Achievement Award from the Brockville Chamber of Commerce, or Ty Carswell of the Gananoque Minor Hockey. Whether it's the Delta Maple Syrup Festival, the Spencerville Fair, the Cardinal Labor Fest, Athens Corn Fest, whether they are volunteering with the Brockville or Gananoque Food Banks, the Westport Legion, Senior Support Services in Lanark, Leeds, Grenville, volunteers with churches, historical societies, agricultural societies, and more, from Rideau Lakes to Front of Young. To every volunteer in our community, I want to say thank you. You are the foundation of this incredible community that I'm proud to serve and that we share as our home.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil.
Recognize the incredible students being honored at this year's Montérégie West Community Network's Youth Gala, an annual event that celebrates Anglophone students in my community of Vaudreuil who demonstrate perseverance, excellence, and leadership in their schools and in their community. These young people have worked hard to overcome challenges and stay focused on their goals. Their determination and commitment set a strong example for their peers and remind us of the important role youth play in shaping our collective future. I want to thank the organizers, the teachers, the principals, the parents, the mentors, and the caregivers who support these students each and every day and help create opportunities for them to succeed. Without their guidance and love, these students simply could not reach their full potential. And to the students being honored, know that I'm proud of you and our community of Vaudreuil is proud of you. You have worked hard, and in your own way, you have made your mark. Your dedication inspires us all, and I wish you every success in the years ahead. I have no doubt this is just the beginning of wonderful things to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for New Tecumseh Gwillimbury.
Mr. Speaker, it's 1 year into this Liberal government's mandate. So you know what that means? It's report card time. Hey. Let's have a look at how the Liberals are doing. Negotiating a trade deal with the United States, fail. Making housing more affordable, fail. Addressing the rising cost of living, fail. Lowering government spending, fail. Getting immigration under control, fail. Across the board, this Liberal government has earned a failing grade. But it's not them being held back, it's Canadians. The young couple who can't afford a first home, the auto worker whose shift got cut, the small business owner who woke up to a 25% tariff, the farmer with nowhere to sell, they're all being held back. The Prime Minister wants to talk about forward guidance. Well, Mr. Speaker, how about he starts by looking back at 365 days of future and the impact that that has had on Canadians?
Just a reminder to members that statement by members, I meant one member at a time. The Honourable Member for Sydney Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, this week we celebrate National Volunteer Week, a time to honour those who make our community stronger, kinder, and more connected. Over the past year, I've had the privilege of recognizing outstanding volunteers and community leaders through monthly spotlights and community leadership awards. Individuals like Jocelyn Hines, Maren Curry, Whitney Green, Steve and Gina DeVoe, Christina Lamy, Dennis Shea, Matt McDonald, Angie McDonald-Fraser, Heather Carr, and Faith Dillon, along with groups like the Cape Breton University hockey team and the volunteers of St. George's Church. Now, their compassion, Mr. Speaker, and dedication remind us that meaningful change begins at the community level. So I invite all members to join me in thanking the volunteers of Sydney Glace Bay and across Canada for all they do.
The Honourable Member for Regina Wascana.
Today, the Liberals want people to believe that they are in favour of pipelines, but it's all an illusion. Not so long ago, they declared there was no business case for LNG development, and this Liberal Prime Minister still hasn't gotten rid of the Liberals' anti-development laws. In my home province of Saskatchewan, natural resource development is not an abstract. They make up 10 to 15% of the provincial government's budget. They pay for hospitals, schools, roads, and social services. But as a landlocked province, Saskatchewan cannot prosper from these resources without pipelines. And for over a decade, this Liberal government has been all talk and no action on resource development. Mr. Speaker, in the face of global trade threats, when will this Liberal government going to get serious about resource development? Instead of more recycled speeches and photo ops, we need to get shovels in the ground quickly for oil and gas infrastructure to build strength at home and unbreakable leverage abroad.
Well said.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, the 52nd edition of Volunteer Week is coming to a close, and it is with pride and gratitude that I would like to highlight the dedication of those who give selflessly. Helping a neighbor, supporting a senior, delivering a meal, providing a ride to a medical appointment, cooking, offering companionship, offering support, showing love. That is what volunteering is all about. Without these guardian angels, countless people would be isolated. A huge number of young people would lack guidance, and the multitude of amateur sports would not be able to take place. Being a volunteer means finding fulfillment through self-giving. It means spreading smiles. It means sowing and reaping moments of happiness. countless organizations rely on volunteers, I'd like to give a special shout out to the volunteer action centers that coordinate these generous efforts in Dautrey, Maskinonge, Matavini, and throughout Quebec. Dear volunteers, you are the light that shines at the heart of our communities. For your daily dedication, I say thank you.
Honourable Member for Ottawa Centre.
You missed an amazing basketball game this Wednesday. The all-party basketball team made up of MPs and staff was victorious yet again this year by just 2 points against the parliamentary press team. It was done, Speaker, to support Christie Lake Kids, which is an incredible charity in my community of Ottawa Centre that provides recreational supports for so many kids in our community. And this charity basketball tournament this year raised $20,000. It's just incredible, Speaker. I want to give a special shout out to our teammates, the honourable members from Kenora, Keewatin, La Prairie, Atatakan, Sackville, Bedford, Preston, Victoria, Whitby, Honoré Mercier, and Desanete, Mississippi, Churchill River. These were incredible players, but also a big thank to all the parliamentary press gallery members, the sponsors, the volunteers, the staff, and the Christie Lake Kids staff team for making this such an incredible event.
The Honourable Member for Wellington, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, I'm raising the alarm bells about Ontario's auto sector. The sector depends on access to the U.S. market. The sector has paid $5 billion in tariffs over the last year. $5 billion. Wow. Passenger car and light truck exports to the United States are plummeting. The Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association has said, quote, you cannot have a commercially viable automotive plant in Canada facing tariffs of that size. Toyota has said that tariffs have made manufacturing in Ontario, quote, unsustainable. Yet the government has given no formal date for formal negotiations on Section 232 tariffs, unlike Mexico, and no explanation for the decision to go slow on the tariff negotiations. The auto sector and its workers are worried about the status quo. They need to know when tariff relief is in sight. Bleeding $5 billion a year is unsustainable. Something is going to break. Yes. The auto sector is running out of time while the government goes slow on its approach to the tariff negotiations. Yes.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada's Prime Minister, this government believes in big projects. We understand the benefits, Mr. Speaker, of having jobs and an economy, building the strongest and healthiest economy in the G7. I stand today because of the potential of the Port of Churchill. This is something, Mr. Speaker, that will connect the prairie provinces to the Atlantic Ocean directly. The potential is there, it's real, it's tangible. We look to the Prime Minister, we look to the Premier of the province, we look to the Indigenous communities, we look to the leadership to understand the value of the Port of Churchill, not only to the province of Manitoba, but to all of Canada, and to ask all parliamentarians to get on side and recognize the true value of these major projects. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bull River.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' recently manufactured majority is starting to settle in. All of a sudden, they can move fast when it comes to grabbing control of committees to prevent scrutiny of their behavior. Ethics, public accounts, operations, and estimates. Committees are important to ensure the public can trust the power is not being abused. And these are at the risk of being taken over by the Liberals. We never seem to have to look very far for glaring examples of why oversight is so important. A software scandal with almost $300 million wasted on failed e-prescribing. The program didn't work. This latest boondoggle makes the ArriveCan scandal look like a warm-up act. Yeah. While the Liberals complain about two-tier health care, they keep defending a $275 million spent on health care for fake benefits for fake asylum claimants. Benefits that Canadians don't have access to. This is Liberal logic. And finally, I hope finally, the week isn't over, the Liberals are turning a gravel pit into a money pit with $200 million spent for Liberal insiders to get rich. And the Liberals say they're just getting started. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne. Mr. Speaker, I have excellent news to share for Canada and for the Canadian Armed Forces. This week, we confirmed that recruitment in the Canadian Armed Forces has reached its highest level in 30 years. Over the past year, the number of applications has more than doubled, reaching over 45,000. Furthermore, we have recruited 7,310 regular force members, which exceeds our target. And our soldiers, sailors, and airmen are doing essential and remarkable work. We need more of them. The Canadian Armed Forces' continued success in recruitment demonstrates much more than mere progress. It reflects a renewed strengthening at the heart of our military institution. Mr. Speaker, our government is proud to rearm, rebuild, and reinvest in our forces. Thank you.
Member from Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Speaker, this week our local food bank held a Volunteer Appreciation Day to thank its supporters for the role they play in helping to address and solve issues of affordability within our community. Project Share has been providing emergency food and support services to residents of Niagara Falls for more than 30 years. And sadly, more than ever, food banks in Niagara and across this country are being stretched beyond their limits by an affordability crisis caused by these Liberals.
That's right.
The PM likes to remind himself and anyone who will listen that he is the smartest person in the room, yet he doubled Justin Trudeau's deficit and only added inflationary pressures to the economic hardship Canadians face today. On March 25th, the PM told Canadians affordability is the best it's ever been in over a decade. But the more these Liberals spend, the worse inflation gets, and the more Canadians struggle just to get by. Best in over a decade? Tell that to the 2 million Canadians who visit a food bank every month, and tell that to the 13,000 residents in Niagara Falls.
Honourable Member for South Surrey White Rock.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, Ottawa was proud to host the 33rd Canadian Legislative Conference of the International Association of Firefighters. This annual gathering brings firefighters from across the country together to engage with parliamentarians and to raise awareness about federal issues that affect both their profession and the communities they serve. Representatives from the White Rock and Surrey Fire Departments raised issues directly affecting their members, including increasing the Memorial Grant Program and strengthening protections for communities against lithium battery fires. These courageous first responders put their lives on the line every day to protect our residents and respond to emergencies. They are also deeply committed to their communities, raising funds for local charities, supporting families in need, and giving back through countless volunteer initiatives. I thank our firefighters for their courage, their compassion, and their unwavering service to our...
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Mr. Speaker, with these Liberals, it is more spending, more debt, more inflation, more of the same. They tell Canadians things are under control, but this Prime Minister doubled Trudeau's deficit, adding $90 billion in net new spending. Now, debt interest costs Canadians $55 billion a year, more than we spend on health transfers. The C.D. Howe Institute says fiscal excess has undermined growth and living standards. Translation, reckless Liberal spending is making Canadians poor. Next week, this government tables its fiscal update. Will it doom Canadians to more of the same?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I know it's Friday, but it seems that my colleague has the wrong QP card, Mr. Speaker.
Oh.
Let me help him, because I think it might want to have some of the facts in order to send to his constituent. Just last week, Mr. Speaker, the International Monetary Fund said Canada has the strongest fiscal position of the G7, Mr. Speaker. That's great news that I hope he's going to bring to his constituent. More than that, Mr. Speaker, Canada will have the second fastest growth in the G7, Mr. Speaker. This is extraordinary. We're going to build this country strong with all Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Hot air, no results. More of the same is exactly what Canadians are getting. Reckless spending that never stops. Billions on consultants, billions on their failed gun grab, billions on high-speed rail, more waste, inflation, and pressure on Canadians. When the Prime Minister says affordability has never been better, is that what he calls record prices and the worst food inflation in the G7? Will the Prime Minister cut the waste and bring down his out-of-control spending, or is he just another Liberal?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, I'm just another Liberal fighting for Canadians every day like all my colleagues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's astonishing. I know it's Friday and things are light because it's sunshine in Ottawa, but Mr. Speaker, no results. Just look at what the International Monetary Fund said just last week. Canada will have the second fastest growth in the G7, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to look as his record, as his scorecard, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we know what matters. Fighting for Canadians every day, helping Canadians in need, building Canada strong together, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Mégantic-Lorable-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal Prime Minister claims that the cost of living has never been so good in over a decade. Yet, with $90 billion in new spending and $55.6 billion a year in interest, Canadians are paying more than ever for housing, food, and transportation. Even the C.D. Howe Institute calls it a fiscal fantasy. Next week, will this Liberal Prime Minister condemn Canada to even more debt, higher interest rates, and an ever-increasing cost of living for families? The Honourable Minister of Finance. I have a great deal of respect for my colleague, but I know it's Friday, but he must be reading the wrong question, Mr. Speaker, because the real question today is how Canada is ranking amongst the other G7 countries. And here, the IMF last week said that Canada will have the second fastest growth in the G7, Mr. Speaker. These are facts, Mr. Speaker, and I know that my colleague in his heart knows that that's the truth. And, of course, he will bring the good news back to all of his electors. Canada is in a good position, and we're going to build a strong Canada together, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Mégantic-Lorable-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, I won't allow the Minister of Finance try to guess what's in my heart, but what's in my heart are the Uyghurs I met last week who've lost their jobs. What's in my heart, Mr. Speaker, is the family I'm meeting at the grocery store who have to decide what to take out of their grocery cart. And what's in my heart, Mr. Speaker, is that Canada is getting poorer, it's changing, and this government is just making things worse day after day. It's Friday, Mr. Speaker. Will this minister show some compassion? Think about Canadian families who are in debt, who will have and create more costs for everyone. That's what's in my heart, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Government House Leader. I know that my colleague has a big heart, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we're somewhat perplexed why he voted against the increase in the OAS and dental care and full school programs, the CCB. He voted against all of these programs. Despite his big heart, Mr. Speaker, we challenged the Conservatives to table the cuts they're proposing. Will the member table in the House these cuts that the Conservative Party is proposing?
The Liberals have made grand promises of spending less and investing more, yet we heard from Finance Canada that their savings plan wasn't about spending less at all. With net new spending at $90 billion and interest on our nation's debt totaling more than we spend on healthcare transfers, Canadians are footing the bill in the amount of $3,300 a year per family. What are the Liberals going to tell Canadians next week when they release their fiscal update? Will it doom Canadians to more of the same?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I have no doubt that my colleague, the Minister of Finance, will bring in an exciting update that will tell Canadians about the major progress that we are making in building Canada strong. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I asked Conservatives to table a detailed list of spending cuts they propose because they do talk about inflationary spending, and I hope my honourable colleague can help me. Is it the Canada Child Benefit? Is that inflationary spending? Is it the dental care plan? Is it old age security? Is it Canada student loans? Could the member tell us?
Honourable member for Carleton Trail Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, after running a decade of deficits, the Liberals have doubled the cost of housing, doubled the cost of rent, and now doubled the deficit from Justin Trudeau. Every dollar the Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians who are struggling to afford groceries, pay their rent, and fill up their tanks with gas. When will these Liberals finally admit they have gotten it wrong, change course, and get their spending under control so Canadians can afford to live again?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Sport.
I would ask again, just like the government House Leader just did, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives talk a big game, but they don't want to get specific about what vital programs they would cut in order to pay for their irresponsible plans, Mr. Speaker. We have Canada Child Benefit, we have the Canadian Dental Care Plan, and just recently we've brought forward the Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit that will deliver over $1,800 per lower income family in that member's riding. She would deny them childcare, she would deny them dental, and she would lower their Canada Child Benefit, Mr. Speaker. Not on this side, we've got Canadians' backs.
The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are scrambling to launch their plan for a new dirty oil pipeline out west. Things are buzzing in Ottawa, but you know where it's quiet? On the developer side. There's no one there. So who's going to pay? Well, the Minister of Natural Resources confirmed yesterday at committee that he wants to hand out $10 billion in public funds to Indigenous communities so they'll agree to participate. The Liberals are trying to buy social license with $10 billion in checks. Will they back down and commit to not putting Quebecers' money into their pipeline? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers will also benefit from our program to build a strong Canada. We saw a new graphite mine. We've seen the opening up of a mega project that will create thousands of jobs in the Montreal region, and that will continue to feed our supply chains and lower costs for Canadians. Quebecers will participate in this upswing in the Canadian economy, and we will continue to build a very, very strong Canada. The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Well, he wanted to talk about something else, which means this question obviously bothered him. Quebecers have already paid $34 billion for the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We're already paying tens of billions in oil subsidies, even though these companies are raking in profits because of the war in Iran. And there's no way we're paying for yet another dirty oil pipeline. Quebecers want their money to be used to fight climate change, to fight U.S. tariffs, and to fund health care. Anything but saving money for oil companies. Will the Liberals finally understand this? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question from my colleague, but I think he's forgotten everything we've done. The Government House Leader has just talked about projects which will advance Quebec. For example, Quebec is one of the biggest mining areas because we are part of these major industries, and there's this new graphite project, and we have built a battery ecosystem. We'll be at the cutting edge of technology to build EV vehicles together, and it's source of pride for Quebecers. The member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' ecological descent into hell continues. This morning, they just approved the expansion of yet another gas project out west. They're announcing Sunrise, a project designed to export gas produced by hydraulic fracturing instead of developing clean energy and reducing our dependence on dirty oil like other countries are doing. Canada is using the war in Iran as an excuse to dig itself deeper into the gas industry, another giant step backward. Is there any limit to the setbacks that the Liberals will accept from their Prime Minister? The Honourable Government House Leader. Canada will remain a leader in conventional and renewable energy, Mr. Speaker. Canada will continue to build major projects which make us proud. And update, Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Minister of Public Services, is in Quebec right now to announce another big project for people in Quebec. The first port with a designation at the Port of Quebec City will be going to continue to build, create jobs, and create opportunities for Quebecers and for all Canadians.
For Lakeland.
Canadian
Canadians must cut back at home while the Prime Minister doubled Trudeau's deficit, spent $90 billion more. Debt interest charges alone over $55 billion. That's more than federal transfers for healthcare to all provinces combined. Yet this PM spends drunkenly on lavish food and flights while he travels the world. But families pay over $3,300 a year for his interest charges. The Liberals force Canadians to sacrifice essentials every day. Food banks are up because food costs have skyrocketed. So when will the Liberals get spending under control so Canadians can afford to live again?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Albertans know, of course, like all Canadians do, that we are in very uncertain times globally. The world is in a tumultuous place, but fortunately, Canada enters this with the strongest debt situation in the G7. That's a fantastic place to be in when you're in difficult times, and now we are spending to make sure that we are protecting Canadians from these dangerous headwinds. I'd ask my colleague, what are the cuts that she would propose that would allow us then to meet her objective of reducing what is already the lowest net debt and one of the lowest deficits in the G7.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Always, Liberals love to spend other people's money and blame everyone and everything else for their own record. The Bank of Canada confirms high deficits drive high interest rates. Since 2015, these Liberals' crazy deficits have skyrocketed. That means higher mortgage payments, higher car payments, higher credit card bills. High Liberal spending drives high inflation, and Canadians pay the price. Every buck the PM spends comes from Canadians. So will Liberals agree with Conservatives to cut consultants, foreign aid, healthcare for fake refugees, bring down costs at grocery stores, pumps and homes, and make Canada affordable for all?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Speaker, perhaps my colleague this morning didn't hear the Minister of Finance highlight the fact that the International Monetary Fund has reaffirmed that Canada has the best debt position in the G7, that we have the second fastest growing economy in the G7. She asked for the government to be able to make tough choices. Our comprehensive expenditure review is going to save $40 billion to the taxpayers of this country. But some of the spending we're doing, Mr. Speaker, is about supporting the Canadian Armed Forces. Is she suggesting that we shouldn't spend $60 billion to support our men and women in uniform? Is that the position of the Conservative Party, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for Portage-Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, it takes a special kind of spending problem to make Justin Trudeau look fiscally responsible, yet this Prime Minister has done it. His budget 2025 added $90 billion in net new spending, and the government is now paying over $55 billion this year just to service our debt. Canadians are being told to tighten their belts, yet this Prime Minister can't even find his. Next week's fiscal update is the moment of truth. Will the Prime Minister finally get serious, rein in his out-of-control spending, and stop pouring inflationary gasoline on family and seniors who are struggling to survive?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.
Because these are very serious times in our country, in fact globally. Canadians understand that we are living through a precarious time, that we have to work extremely hard to ensure that we build our economy, that we invest in Canadians so that they are supported through these difficult times. And that's why, speakers, Canadians deserve serious leadership, and that is precisely what this Prime Minister and this government is doing. We are investing in Canadians as a bridge to a better future tomorrow. That's the work we're doing, whether it's the work we're doing in diversifying our economy here in Canada and opening new countries as places to...
The Honourable Member for Portage-Lisgar.
Serious leadership looks like understanding what Canadians are going through. The Prime Minister says affordability has never been better. If that's true, I would hate to see what he thinks expensive looks like. When was the last time that he actually went into a grocery store and bought groceries for himself in Canada? I highly doubt it's been in this millennium. So let me remind him of reality. After a decade of Liberal spending, families are paying 42% more for groceries than they were in 2015. Everything costs more. Canadians are struggling to stay afloat. If life is so affordable, why are more Canadians lining up at food banks than ever before?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I'll give Conservatives credit. They are on message. The script doesn't change, Mr. Speaker. It does not change. But I'll remind my colleagues that it was their leader. They talk about being in touch. It was their leader who stood in front of the home of a waitress and called it a shack. What do they want to cut? They've never answered us on that side. What would they cut? Would they cut the child benefit? Would they cut the food program in schools? Would they cut daycare supports? They'd cut all of it, Mr. Speaker. They don't have a plan. They're not serious.
Order, order. The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands. Order. Rideau Lakes.
The Ethics Committee issued its report to make Canada's conflict of interest laws stronger, and we know that Canada needs it because Canadians deserve accountability, but we have a Prime Minister who is guaranteed future bonus payments from Brookfield, the company that he used to run. So the Prime Minister should sell his assets so Canadians know that his decisions are in the public interest, not his own personal financial interest, which is currently the case. So the Prime Minister has an opportunity to do the right thing, to show Canadians he's serious about democracy and about accountability. So will the Prime Minister sell his assets and adopt the committee's recommendations?
The honourable government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as that member knows, all 343 of us must abide by some of the strictest ethics rules that exist in the world. The Prime Minister disposed of all his assets in a blind trust on the day of his election as Liberal Party leader, 5 days before he was sworn in as Prime Minister. He took this step on day one, and let's contrast that with that member's leader, who's been here for 20 years and still does not have a security clearance, Mr. Speaker. Not a security clearance. That member needs to stand in his place and answer, when will his leader get a security?
Order, order. The honourable member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals handed $200 million tax dollars to a six-person company of Liberal insiders to lease a so-called spaceport consisting of a gravel parking lot and a small concrete slab. $200 million tax dollars to a company that doesn't even own the land, but rather leases the land from the province of Nova Scotia for a fraction of the price. How do these Liberals justify handing $200 million tax dollars to Liberal insiders for a gravel pit?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, establishing Canadian sovereign space launch capabilities is going to drive billions of dollars in investments. It's going to create good-paying jobs. It's going to increase Canada's sovereignty, reduce our economy's reliance on the United States, and support a commercial space launch and re-entry industry that could be worth up to $40 billion. This is what we're investing in, essential capabilities that protect Canada and create massive economic benefits for Canadians. How can they be against that, Mr. Speaker?
The honourable member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Mr. Speaker, only the Liberals could spend $200 million tax dollars to rent land already owned by taxpayers. But then again, the former Liberal Premier of Nova Scotia serves on the advisory board to the company, and the lobbyist for the project is none other than a former staffer to the Liberal Minister of Justice. Isn't this just another case of Liberal insiders getting rich while taxpayers get ripped off?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, we are busy rebuilding, rearming, and reinvesting in the Canadian Armed Forces. We're proud to invest in space capabilities, including space launch infrastructure. It's important for us to assert our sovereignty and our security in space-based communications, Mr. Speaker, particularly in the Arctic. This is one of a continuing series of generational investments to ensure both Canada's security and our sovereignty. Thank you, sir.
The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu is not Montreal, but the federal government considers Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu to be Montreal for the purposes of applying the rules of the TFW program. Result, because the unemployment rate is high in Montreal, we're not allowed to hire or retain workers in Saint-Jean, even though our local unemployment rate is low. Everyone has spoken out, the city, members of the National Assembly in Quebec City, the Chamber of Commerce, and many others. I've myself contacted 3 ministers, including the Minister of Quebec. Since Saint-Jean is not Montreal, will this government treat Saint-Jean separately instead of harming businesses?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to make sure that the member opposite knows that our temporary foreign work program, the use is down 50% in 2025 and makes up less than 1% of our workforce. In terms of ensuring that our EI program tackles the needs of all communities across the country, that's something that our government remains committed to, especially at a time when our EI program is so essential to Canadian workers right across the country.
The Honourable Member for Saint Jean. Mr. Speaker, the federal government lazily assumes that all cities within the same census metropolitan area are the same, but Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu is not Montreal. People from Montreal won't take a 2.5-hour commute by public transit to come to work there every day, and we're a national strategic hub for defense. And at a time when the federal government is investing in defense, our local businesses are not allowed to hire or retain their workforce. Does this minister realize how absurd this is, and will they change the rules? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to dialogue with the Quebec government with respect to the temporary foreign workers, and we know how important Quebec's regions need labour, and there's nothing sadder if you have an orders you can't fill because you don't have enough workers. So we're very sensitive to the situation described by my Bloc colleague, and we will continue to dialogue with Quebec government in this respect.
Member for Red Deer. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Immigration had the gall to say it's perfectly fine for Canadians to fund health care for scammers, rejected refugees claimants, because, I quote, it's just 0.2% of the total health spending. Unbelievable! Over the past decade, more than 130,000 failed asylum claimants received better health care than Canadian taxpayers, footing the $275 million bill. Why is this Liberal government, why is this acceptable to this Liberal government?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
The member is referring to the interim federal health program, Mr. Speaker, a program that's been in existence since the 1950s, a program that's been supported by successive Conservative and Liberal governments. Yes, this program does provide health care for those seeking asylum. What have we seen since 2015? A mass displacement crisis across the world. Canada has seen a mass increase as a result of those seeking asylum in this country. The program's costs obviously have grown dramatically since then. What have we done? We've worked to bring down costs, putting in place a co-payment system going into effect in May.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer.
These Liberals should have to look the Canadians in the eye who can't access health care. Facing such long waits in hospitals, they are dying. And tell them their place in the system that they pay for is being bumped by a fake refugee taking advantage of them. As much as the minister enjoys manipulating what is said, the reality is Canadians are getting worse health care than the scammers. Rejected refugees, for whatever reason, should not be in Canada, and they certainly should not be getting better health care than Canadians. When will it end?
Secretary of Immigration.
Use of the interim federal health program, Mr. Speaker, has declined by 43% quite recently. We'll continue to see that because we're seeing a dramatic decline in the number of people seeking asylum in this country. It's down by a third, in fact. In fact, let's go one step further, though, and question the premise of the question. Refugees make up 1% of the country's population. Are they trying to tell us seriously now that refugees are to blame for challenges in the healthcare system? They demonize, they play right-wing politics, they embrace populism. It's no way forward. We'll focus on Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Similkameen, South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
The Liberal government spent almost $300 million on a national prescribing software that filled less than 5% of all prescriptions. Now they've canceled it entirely, yet 85% of the technology used is in the private hands of TELUS Health. Wow. That's the definition of wasteful spending of tax dollars. Will the health minister explain to Canadians how she wasted $300 million on prescribed IT?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her question. We both work on the Health Committee, and I respect her work on health issues and also on this topic. So as the member knows, Prescribe It was developed and introduced under the previous government at a request of provinces and territories. Unfortunately, the uptake wasn't high enough, so our new government has decided to end the program. At the same time, we've introduced a connected care bill through the Senate, which will increase interoperability for digital tools and solutions. Then this will help improve healthcare and connectivity for patients in Canada. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Similkameen, South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Private sector staff employee wasted $300 million, they would be fired. But the Liberals have fired no one. for their prescribed IT disaster. I questioned the CEO responsible for it. He wouldn't say where things went wrong. He even refused to say how much taxpayers paid him. Why is the minister hiding the truth on this $300 million boondoggle?
The Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I've said, Prescribe It was introduced in the last Parliament under the last government at the request of provinces and territories. Unfortunately, the uptake wasn't high, and we've have a lot of lessons learned, and we continue to collaborate with provinces and territories on a path forward. At the same time, we'll support provinces and territories on their digital solutions with our Bill S5. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Signal Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's ambassador to the U.S. says Canada is ready, willing, and able to start the CUSMA review. The USTR says the U.S. is ready to talk. So what's the delay? This reminds me of a grade 7 school dance. Everyone wants to dance, but no one will be the first to ask. 2.6 million Canadian jobs rely on trade with the U.S. Tariffs are costing Canadians billions. When will this Prime Minister pick up the phone, get moving on U.S. trade deal that he promised Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Speaker, the Canada-U.S. trade relationship is vitally important. It supports millions of jobs on both sides of the border. It supports our workers, our industries, and our businesses. With our new advisory council, we'll continue to take a Team Canada approach as we approach the CUSMA review. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, in the face of rising fuel prices driven by global instability, Canadians expect and deserve timely, meaningful, and tangible relief. That's exactly what the good people of the Bay of Quinte experienced recently when they went to fill up their gas station. Suspending the fuel excise tax until Labor Day is expected to reduce Canada's price at the pump by about 10 cents a litre. In advance of next week's spring economic update, can the Minister of Finance then let Canadians know how this and other measures are helping put money back?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, what a great question from a great MP from the good people of Bay and Quinte. I know that at home they're celebrating this great member, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it's so true. People are starting to see at the pump the result of our measure, Mr. Speaker, when we suspended the federal fuel excise tax, Mr. Speaker. Exactly. It's not only the good people of Bay and Quinte that are saying it, but it's across the nation. And I know the Conservative will join us to say that this is a measure that is helping affordability. But good news, Mr. Speaker, it's not the only one. We've already done that with grocery, and one thing they know will always be there for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Dublin-Caledon.
It's now been widely reported in the media that part of the Liberal strategy to get Trump's tariffs removed is delay. And yesterday at the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Canadian ambassador to the United States said they have detailed an analysis on exactly how much this hurts Canadian businesses. So they know the cost. So the Brampton auto plant closes, no problem. It's part of the delay strategy. Steel mills close, no problem. It's part of the delay strategy. Tens of thousands of Canadians lose their job, no problem. It's part of the delay strategy. At what point do they say enough is enough job losses, enough pain to stop this strategy of delay?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade.
Canada already has the best deal among U.S. trading partners in the world, and we're working hard to maintain that deal. We continue to engage with our American and our Mexican counterparts to review CUSMA. At the same time, Canadians gave us a mandate to expand our non-U.S. trade with the world. That's what we're doing. The third prong of that is working together with provinces, territories, industries, unions, every Canadian working together to prepare for this. We are ready to go. This is what Canadians sent us to do. We're going to build Canada strong.
The Honourable Member for Dublin-Caledon.
So the answer from the Liberal government is $5 billion collected on Canadian automakers, which is putting Canadian auto workers out of jail. $4 billion of those tariffs are paid by Honda and Toyota, who will not continue to pay those tariffs. Their answer is, don't worry, there's nothing to see here because we're going to sign a free trade deal with Ecuador. The Minister of International Trade, his riding has the Brampton auto plant that closed. Their strategy of delay delay led to that plant closing. When will they give up on this strategy of delay and get the tariffs off for Canadian workers?
Yeah, let's go.
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, our strategy is actually to double non-U.S. trade over the next 10 years while continuing to work on the CUSMA review as the Minister is doing. I will also say that in the meantime, we are building trade relationships with Indonesia, with China, with India, with Mexico, with Brazil, looking forward to an FTA with the ASEAN in 2026 and working on Mercosur as well. Mr. Speaker, that's what working for the Canadian public is all about. That's what building Canada strong means.
The Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, under this Prime Minister, tariffs on steel have doubled, tariffs on lumber have tripled, and barriers on Canadian manufacturers have only expanded. Yet he has not secured the removal of a single one of those tariffs. While he says those tariffs are part of the reason Canada's economy is struggling, yet Mexico is getting close to a deal with the U.S. 2.6 million Canadians depend on trade with the United States for their livelihoods. So why is this Prime Minister dragging this out instead of fighting for tariff-free trade, and when will he deliver the results that he promised Canadian workers?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, as we approach the CUSMA review, we need to focus on trade diversification. Our efforts are working. They're leading to real results. Last year, 17% increase in non-U.S. exports. Fact number two, 170 million metric tons from the Port of Vancouver, a historic record. That's more shipments to China, Japan, and South Korea. And just in from the Port of St. John's, cargoes up by 30% at that port alone. Our efforts to open up new partnerships around the world are working. That includes Indonesia, Ecuador, UAE, with the European Union, and of course others with India, ASEAN, Mercosur, Philippines, Thailand, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. We are at the door. We're creating opportunities for Canadian workers. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have heard this over and over again, and alas, Canadians cannot survive and their jobs do not survive on liberal rhetoric alone. Tariffs are higher, they're broader, and they're hurting Canadian workers. Yet the government has not gotten any of them removed. So on behalf of those 2.6 million Canadians whose livelihoods depend on trade with the United States, where's the plan? Where are the results?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister responsible for Canada-US trade.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians sent us to Ottawa to get the best deal, not to settle for a bad deal. We're working at our pace to make sure we get the best deal for Canadians. We're consulting with Canadians. We're consulting with industries. We're using every tool, legal, diplomatic, economic tools, working with provinces, with territories, with Canadians to make sure we get the best deal possible. We're not going to negotiate in public, but we are working together.
Honourable Member for Windsor, Tecumseh Lakeshore.
The new 232 tariffs are gutting our tool and mold and die companies in Windsor, Essex, and across the country. These shops are vital to our manufacturing industry. Hundreds of thousands of skilled workers will lose their jobs. Where is this Liberal Prime Minister's plan? Workers need results now in order to survive. When will the Prime Minister finally do his job, get to the table, and put our workers first for a change?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I entirely reject the premise of that question. We are there for the workers right now. My colleague, the Deputy Government House Leader, is in Windsor today, marking the reduction of the excise tax, which helps workers and all residential households in Windsor. In addition, we have the third shift that's come to Stellantis in Windsor. 1 millionth battery cell has just been manufactured at the Nexstar plant. We're working hard to develop the economy of Windsor with Windsorites while also helping them do the diversification that they and we know we need to do in this changing era.
Honourable Member from Tecumseh-Gwillimbury.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 278 days since the Prime Minister's own drop-dead deadline for a trade deal with the United States. In that time, 2.7 million Canadian jobs that depend on cross-border trade have been threatened by tariffs and uncertainty. While Mexico is at the negotiating table, this Prime Minister is on YouTube calling Canada-US trade a weakness instead of fighting for our businesses and workers. Enough talking. We just want the date. When will Canada have a trade deal with the U.S. that these Liberals promised?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we already have a trade deal with the United States. It's called CUSMA, and we are going through the review process, and we understand the challenge to Canadian workers, to Canadian industry, and as the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and the Prime Minister have made very clear, we are at the table. We are having conversations with the U.S. administration. We are engaging, but you know what? The Conservatives have made very clear, and the Prime Minister has made very clear that we are not going to settle for a bad deal. In the interim, we are supporting industries. We are supporting workers that are being impacted by the tariffs that we feel are unjustified, but we will take no lessons from the Conservatives. I'll take the Canadians back to 2018 when they would have had us fold before we got the best deal for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Newton-Tecumseh-Gwillimbury.
Well, Mr. Speaker, by the time I finished asking this question, Canada will have done more trade with the United States than the value of this Prime Minister's trade agreements with Ecuador, India, and the UAE all combined. The reality is our trade relationship with the United States, what this Prime Minister calls a weakness, represents over $900 billion in annual trade, 2.7 million jobs, but he refuses to fight for these workers and our economy. Exactly. Will the Prime Minister admit the only real weakness is his own?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is that we, along with this country as a whole, are continuing to diversify non-U.S. trade. That means real results. More than 12 agreements over the past 6 months across 4 continents. That's a result, Mr. Speaker, that I ask my honourable colleague to acknowledge. Furthermore, as we work to double non-U.S. trade, we will build Canada strong internally. We will bring down internal barriers to trade. We will build national projects.
The Honourable Member for Sudbury East, Manitoulin, Nickel Belt.
Mr. Speaker, tariffs on softwood lumber have tripled to 45%. Now hundreds of workers in Nairn Centre and Gogama are facing indefinite sawmill shutdowns, leaving families in real uncertainty. Workers in my riding, whose jobs rely on free trade with the U.S., need real action now. When will the Liberals fight against these tariffs and fight for tariff-free trade?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Well, I thank my colleague for his question. We'll always stand with mill towns. The combined duties and tariffs are scheduled to go down to 35% based on the updates that came the last couple of weeks. So small correction there, but all still too painful and all still unjustified with the United States. That's why we are working to both control the issues that we can control and engage with the Americans on this issue. We've given $2.5 billion of supports to the forestry sector. We are going to be taking receipt of the Forestry Sector's Transformation Task Force imminently with many great ideas. We will be there for workers, and I welcome you to come join us and work with us on that.
The Honourable Member for Sudbury East, Manitoulin, Nickel Belt.
The Prime Minister was elected on the premise that he was the man. Well, it seems that the man with the plan has disappeared. This Liberal government has been on the sidelines for far too long, failing to secure a single reduction on tariffs, while Northern Ontarians continue to lose both patients and jobs. Communities are being pushed to a breaking point, yet there's still no progress and no real results from this Liberal government. When will the Prime Minister finally get his act in gear and deliver the fair trade deal he promised a year ago?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Well, as my colleagues across the way have heard countless times, we will continue to make sure we get the best deal, not just any deal. But let's talk about the last year. Wages growing faster than inflation every month that the Prime Minister's been Prime Minister. FDI, foreign direct investment, highest in 18 years, double the next nation in the G7. Record oil production, non-U.S. trade way up. And last year we created more jobs than the United States. Trade wars are brutal, but we are going to win this trade war. We want your help doing it.
L'honorable député de Vaudreuil.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil. Mr. Speaker, Canada has for a long time been a proud and active member of the international Francophone community. Can the Minister of Foreign Affairs inform this House of the government's efforts and priorities to support Canada's bid to host the Francophonie Summit and explain how this initiative will strengthen our cultural ties, economic partnerships, and our leadership within the global Francophone community?
L'honorable Ministre des Affaires étrangères.
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, when I was in France last month, I officially submitted Canada's bid to host the 2028 Francophonie Summit. This summit will reinforce our leadership, especially in vibrant Francophone and Acadian communities. I also met with the Secretary General of the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie to reaffirm that Canada is committed to our partnerships and economic and cultural ties. Mr. Speaker, the French language is at the heart of Canada's identity. Thank you.
Is the Prime Minister waving the white flag on U.S. tariffs? He sits by and does nothing while U.S. tariffs on steel have doubled and lumber tariffs tripled. He has failed in negotiating the reduction of a single tariff. Sawmills in BC towns that they support are reeling from his failure to negotiate a deal. Speeches, illusions, excuses, and failures aren't going to cut it for the millions of families' livelihoods at stake. When will the Prime Minister start delivering results instead of excuses?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and his team, the Ambassador, the ministers involved, we are prepared and ready and stand willing to negotiate in good faith a deal with the United States. It will not be any deal. It will be a deal acceptable for Canada. Contrast that with the Conservative position, with the member's colleague going to Washington saying Canadians are having a hissy fit, and them getting up every day and systematically urging us to take any deal, Mr. Speaker. We won't do that.
Honourable Member Kamloops, Shrubs, Central Rockies.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's illusions, tactic, and excuses are no help for Canadians. Instead of getting a trade deal last July like he promised, he squandered his leverage with concessions made 10 months ago. He doesn't even show up to do his job while Mexico makes progress ahead of him. Why did the Liberal Prime Minister make the strategic error of dragging this out instead of using the leverage we had at the beginning of the talks to get tariffs removed on Canadian goods?
Good question.
Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, we all know the vital importance of the Canada-U.S. relationship, especially as it relates to trade. I've seen it firsthand in the private sector. I spent 13 years facilitating international trade, utilizing NAFTA, utilizing CUSMA, and thousands of transactions, and we'll continue to be at the table. We need to ensure that we take a Team Canada approach, and that's exactly what we're doing. We don't want to go back to 2018 when the Conservatives asked us to capitulate and take any deal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Richmond Centre Marple.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals say they defend private property rights. Yet in the Coventry case, they chose not to argue extinguishment, which is how fee simple ownership has been historically defended. They weaken protections, then claim to defend them. Will the Liberals withdraw their directive and instruct their lawyers to defend private property rights to protect Canadians? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Northern Arctic Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. We disagree with the BC Supreme Court's ruling, and that is why we appealed it back in September. As a government, we always prefer to negotiate instead of going to court. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, in all of our negotiations dating back to 1970, no agreement between the federal government and First Nations has ever led to Canadians losing their privately owned land, not a single one. All discussions of Aboriginal title at the federal level exclude private property. No modern treaty, negotiated agreement, or federal approach has led to people losing privately owned land. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Milton East, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, Bill C-22, an act respecting lawful access, was referred to the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. As this critical piece of legislation continues its parliamentary journey, it's important to remind Canadians how overdue a lawful access regime is in our country. This has been requested by law enforcement agencies for decades. Could the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety expand on how crucial this legislation is for the safety and security of all Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the excellent work that she does to ensure that public safety issues in her riding are heard and addressed here within the government. It's been such a pleasure to see my colleagues from all parties at the parliamentary reception for the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, where we were all able to discuss C-22. It's high time to equip our law enforcement with the modern tools that they need to effectively fight serious crimes like extortion, money laundering, and exploitation of children. Law enforcement have shared their needs with us very clearly.
Over 12 illegal garbage dumps in the Cowichan Valley, many on Cowichan Tribe's land. Some are so large they will take years to remediate, others polluting a salmon-bearing Cowichan River. For decades, authorities at all levels have turned a blind eye to this environmental disaster and ongoing illegal dumping. I wrote a letter to the Minister of Indigenous Service weeks ago demanding the Liberals identify authorities at all levels, hold them responsible for this travesty, and take action immediately. And from the Minister, no response, no action, no cleanup. The Liberals claim to be stewards of our land. Is this just another Liberal illusion?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for looking out for my relatives from the Cowichan tribes. I know that they are probably very furious about what's happening. We will work with them. We will work with others to ensure that no illegal dumping occurs on their property, and we'll make sure that stops as soon as possible. Thank you.
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, steel workers were in Ottawa this week, reminding this government that steel is a backbone of our economy and our economic sovereignty. You know, the Prime Minister has said that Canada will use Canadian materials in Canadian projects, but Canada does not yet have that capacity. Will the government take advantage of this incredible opportunity to build Canadian capacity, to grow our industry, and to invest in workers? Will they work with the United Steelworkers to develop and implement the comprehensive steel industrial strategy that they're calling for?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We agree that steel is a fundamentally strength of the Canadian sector, of Canadian, and our Build Canada, our Buy Canadian policies are all geared towards using as much Canadian steel as possible, and we look forward to working with the United Steelworkers and other industrial unions, as well as employers and businesses, to maximize the use of Canadian steel in Canada.
For Edmonton Strathcona.
So the government is not listening to steel workers. You know, this government left USW off its CUSMA Advisory Council. They also shut out the Canada Labour Congress and the over 3 million Canadian workers that they represent. Instead, they gave seats to more than a dozen CEOs, prominent Conservatives, and just 2 Labour representatives. How can this government claim to be there for workers while refusing to give them seats at the table? Will they expand worker representation before CUSMA negotiations begin, starting with the CLC?
Next. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Minister's Advisory Council includes the President of Unifor, it includes la Présidente de la FTQ, so workers' interests will be absolutely represented on this advisory council. I was proud just a couple of weeks ago to visit Sault Ste. Marie with my incredible colleague from Sault Ste. Marie, to visit Algoma Steel, to meet with the steel workers, to talk about the exciting future of building Canada strong, buy Canadian, and see that electric arc furnace fired up, Mr. Speaker. We are going to have a steel industry in Canada forever.
Ceci met fin à la période question. This brings I have a point of order for the member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Speaker, I'd like to seek unanimous consent to table a document detailing the cuts Conservatives would make.
I heard a no, so there is no unanimous consent. Order, order, order. It's then. I heard it. I heard a no. I heard a no. So. Order, order. Routine proceedings will now begin. I see the Government House Leader rising on a point of order.
Président, en ce qui a trait à l'affaire émanant du gouvernement numéro.
Mr. Speaker, I will give notice that with respect to consideration of government business number 9 at the next sitting of the House, a Minister of the Crown shall move pursuant to Standing Order 57 that debate not be further adjourned.
Été noté. Donc, affaires courantes ordinaires.
So, daily routine of business, tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, for all MPs that are walking around. You cannot be between the chair, the speaker, and the member of parliament who will be recognized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I have the honor of tabling in both official languages the treaty between the Government of Canada and the Government of the Republic of the Philippines on the transfer of sentenced persons and on cooperation in the enforcement of penal sentences done at Manila on May 22, 2003.
The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36.8a, I have the honor to table in both official languages the government's responses to 24 petitions. These returns will be tabled in an electronic format.
Tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Statement.